you to this event on managing your mental health and sustaining positivity and positive wellbeing now and beyond COVID-19, hosted by EventWell and HBAA. Leigh, were you going to do an introduction for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. So massive thank you for everyone that's joined us today on another sunny Thursday in lockdown. This was a really good opportunity for us at the HBAA to be able to collaborate across other industry experts with regards to mental health and wellbeing, and just making sure that you have access to toolkits, to guidance, to knowledge from different people across the industry. And as you know, the HBAA have been championing mental health for the last 18 months with regards to our membership and how that can help us in the good times and in the bad times. And right now, you know, I was saying to somebody the other day, this is beyond washing hands. Our mental health and wellbeing is really going to be taking a battering right now, and we need to make sure that we give ourselves the best position and the best chance to look after ourselves more long term. So a massive thank you to Helen from EventWell for working in collaboration and moderating the system and enabling us to have this amazing technology. To Alec from Live More Offline, who I've been collaborating with for a couple of things now, and also from Mark from Boulevard Events, who supported us last year on our Minding Your Mental Health event in May, which seems just like many years ago. And both Mark and myself are also now on the board at EventWell, which is amazing. So Mark is the chair and I am vice. And then also Gavin from Balancing Edges. And we are not social distancing because we are actually married. But Gavin has been delivering the mental health first aid training, not just for EventWell, but also for the HBAA, and also doing some free seminars during this time. So it was a really good opportunity for us all to come together and just to share a bit of knowledge and for you to ask questions, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. So massive thank you, and Helen, I'll hand back over to you.
Yes, thank you, Leigh. Pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be moderating this event today as well, and it's a digital event. So just some housekeeping rules. Q&A, you'll see a box to the right hand side that's got a chat function. If you've got any questions that you want to ask any of our panelists, our lovely panelists today, then use the Q&A section that you can see there, select that function. You can put your question in there. If anybody wants to back up somebody else's question, just vote for that. Very, very similar to what you do on Slido, and then it will push up the most popular question to the top. So it gives us an indication of the questions that people want the most answers to, and we'll go with the most popular. I think we're going to get started.
Yeah.
Shall we get started, folks? Okay. Okay. So it's a difficult and challenging time for everybody. We're all in this together, though. It's important to remember that, and not just from a UK event industry perspective, but a global event industry perspective. We've all been hit in the same way, so it's important to remember that we're not alone in this. But really, in terms of the first question, you know, our mental health and wellbeing is going to be much more broadly affected than just washing hands, hygiene factors and social distancing. What do we need to be doing to sustain good mental health? I'm going to go to Alex and Mark with that question first.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to start. So I would be coming at this from a digital wellbeing angle, and obviously we're dealing with a lot of challenges at the moment. But one challenge that can be easy to overlook is the fact that we're now spending so much more time online and using technology. Now that's absolutely right. That's the way it should be, because that's the way that we can work and communicate with loved ones. But there can be impacts to our well-being depending on how we use technology. So it's actually really valuable to look at the way in which we're using technology. So our digital habits can increase anxiety if, say, you know, we're getting caught into compulsive news checking. Studies have shown the passive scrolling of social media can impact loneliness and anxiety as well. And also, if we're working in an environment where we have many more digital messages and distractions, and that can cause stress and reduce productivity as well. So it's really about looking at how the technology might be impacting us at this point in time, and putting in place measures to be able to take control of our relationship with technology and reduce those negative aspects while keeping it positive. So small things like making sure that you have enough time offline as well, so having a bit of a break. And then what I recommend is that you start at the beginning of each day with what it is that you want to experience in that day, what it is that you want to achieve, and then notice where your digital habits are starting to take you away from those things. So are you being pulled into a lot of social media or news checking, such, and then noticing how the impact of that, and then putting in place measures to reduce that.
Yeah, so it's all about being sensible with digital technology and establishing boundaries and protecting your downtime. So it's all really important stuff, isn't it? Mark, do you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, of course. I think Alex touched on some really important points there. I think sometimes we have a tendency as humans to kind of overcomplicate what we need. And the way we think about our mental health, a lot of the time, simpler is better. And a lot of the things Alex was just saying there was kind of taking a bit of time out away from digital and a bit of time offline can help with that. One of the ways I've found really useful to categorize this in my head, and I learned this from a guy called Dr. Robert Lustig, and many of you have probably heard me talk about Dr. Robert Lustig before. It's Lustig for those who are interested, but he breaks it into three things essentially, and they all begin with C. And these are the three things that we need to focus on in order to build higher levels of serotonin in the brain and ultimately better health and well-being and mental health. The first C is coping. And essentially what coping is all the things that we need to do, all the behaviours we need to implement in order to support health. So whether that's drink more water, eat a better diet, get better sleep, or create better habits around our sleep, meditate. There's 1,000 behaviours, but essentially coping is one bracket of things that we need to think about in order to foster better mental health. The second thing, and this one's tough because of the situation that we're in, but the second one is connection. As human beings, we need to feel connected to each other. We need to feel like we're building better relationships. We're building a rapport with the people around us, and we're genuinely growing together as a race. And the more we can connect with our fellow human beings, the better. And obviously that's a challenging thing right now, but that's why platforms like Remo that we're using now, and Zoom and House Party and whatever your kind of preferred medium is, are more important than ever. But like Alex touched on, it's quite important to be intentional about the use of those platforms, because it's quite easy to get online and be there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes and realize actually I haven't done anything. I've just jumped online and now I'm watching a YouTube video. So being intentional about the way that we use those platforms is quite important as well in order to achieve that connection. And then the last one that begins with C as well is contribution. And this one is for me is the key in terms of the situation we're in, because this is all about having a purpose. And for a lot of us at the moment, that purpose that we're used to, whether it's work, volunteering, all the stuff that we usually fill our day with and that we get out of bed for many of us has been taken away. And filling that gap of having something to contribute to on a daily basis is going to be really vital to support our mental health. And spending some time thinking about what those things could be, and being intentional, being motivated to those things, to do those things on a daily basis is going to be really vital. And I think if we can get to a point where we're waking up in the morning and we're focusing on those three categories of things, and we're doing as many behaviours as we possibly can, because we know that they support our levels of serotonin, they support our mental health overall. I think it's gonna really help all of us, and it's something that we can really focus on. And when you simplify it like that, I've found personally in my life it's become a lot easier to manage my mental health consistently over a long period of time. So.
Yeah. Which brings us actually from what you guys have covered, brings us quite nicely into the next question, which is, we're adapting at the moment, aren't we, to delivering more like digital online events. I don't like to use the word pivot everyone's using the pivot word. But yeah, we're moving to more digital formats of the events that we deliver. So how can venues, agencies, event organisers, what can they do to ensure that it's not abused, that we don't create burnout because we're over Zooming or over remoing or whatever platforms we're using, Zoom meetings as well, as we having human meetings more than we would do in a live format? I'm going to ask Alex and Gavin. How about Gavin? Gavin, you answer that and then we'll go to Alex.
I think it's quite a difficult one because I can see that Zoom and other formats are going to become much more common moving forward. So, and I think it's a bit like the email problem, really, that we've had for the last 15, 20 years, whatever we've had emails for, where emails become the way of communicating. And what I would say is Zoom is better than email, because at least you're able to speak to people and see people. So in a way, it's not a bad thing, but it needs to be controlled because it shouldn't replace the face-to-face meetings, which are really important. We are designed to be sociable animals. We need to be sociable. And as I say, while Zoom's better than email, it's not as good as a face-to-face meeting. So it's about control, really. And I don't think companies should come out of this thinking we found a solution to saving X millions of pounds a year by not having face-to-face meetings. So it's got to be controlled, really, is what I would say. And I think how we do that is a difficult one, because I don't think we've got to the bottom of how we control emails either. So I've not got the definitive answer. I just think it's a word of caution, really, for the industry, well, not just our industry, all industries, to not let it take over. And it will end up with Zoom fatigue. There's no doubt about that.
I think we're feeling Zoom fatigue right now.
Yeah, we
we
use the platform for social stuff as well. We use Zoom at weekends, and by the time we get to the weekend, we're thinking, I really can't do another Zoom meeting, even though it's a social event. I really don't want to have my family on Zoom as well.
But then you end up feeling bad because you've given it all week to your work.
Yeah.
But at the weekends, when your family and friends, some of them are, as you said, are lonely and are desperate for support, you don't want to actually spend the time, and you end up beating yourself up over it.
And of course, we know Zoom inside out now. They don't know Zoom very well, so we're saying, get the controls, work this, work that. So it gets frustrating as well, which isn't good for your mental health either. So there's all sorts of issues around that. But I haven't got a definitive answer about how to resolve it, because I think there is a danger it will get out of control. I don't know what Mark thinks. He's coming on this question as well, I think, aren't you, Mark?
Well, I agree with everything you say, and from a personal point of view, I've experienced that. Arguably the most important Zoom of my week is a Saturday night quiz with my family. And by the time I get there, I genuinely want to have a beer and sit on the sofa and just chill out.
Totally get that.
It's difficult. The way I deal with it, science for it, but I see that activity as an opportunity for me to give and for me to contribute to the well-being of my family. And even though I don't particularly feel like it, I do always feel better afterwards. Not that I'm particularly special, but I know that it's important for them to see me and to engage with me. If I don't fancy it, I've always felt better afterwards because I see the smile on my mum's face and my dad's face, and I feel
we're
exactly
the same.
So it does help,
It's unbelievable, though, isn't it? Because you do, in a way, we dread it in a way because, if I can say it, can't be asked. That's how I get to the point of can't be asked. But actually, you say exactly that, Mark. When you come off it, and I know that my parents have spent all day preparing and how much it is meant to them, then it is worth it. But unfortunately, because we are, and Alex, you'll know this as well, we have to have Zoom etiquette, don't we?
Yeah, and I guess firstly, kind of not feeling bad about actually feeling like, it's too much, because the more and more people are experiencing the growth in Zoom calls that we're having at the moment, the more people are actually experiencing exactly this. And there's all this talk now about Zoom fatigue. And there's some really kind of solid reasons as to why we're feeling the way that we are. So it actually takes our brain a lot more effort to focus and to process all of the non-visual cues over Zoom in this, kind of environment, where it's harder to see, gaze direction and the rest of the bodily cues. We also end up with back-to-back calls, you know, whereas in real life you wouldn't be jumping straight from one meeting to another. And, you know, we're getting distracted as well by the fact that you can see your own face on Zoom calls too, which leads to distraction, but also you feel this need to be socially performing and to kind of be your happy, cheerful self, you know, and that in itself is also really exhausting. And so there are things that you can do, and you know, the things that I recommend are bringing in 25-minute or 50-minute calls, so allowing people to have that break between calls, have a cup of tea or you know, nip to the toilet. If you're finding yourself really distracting, you can actually hide self-view on Zoom, and I do that because I got to the point where I just didn't want to see my face anymore. So trying not to multitask during the calls, because that causes distraction and stress and just more things you're trying to do at once. And then, I mean, I've got to the point now where, and it's really important also to question when we use Zoom. So Zoom is fabulous for feeling more connected. You can see people. I think with family, it's exceptional. But are there times during our day, if we have 6 Zoom calls in a day and finish exhausted, how many of those needed to be Zoom calls? And could some of them actually just be a phone call where you could sit in the garden and speak and actually just have a little bit of time off? So they would be the suggestions that I would kind of put forward on that side. And things I've been experimenting with myself.
I suppose it's all about being sensible, isn't it? Because effectively a Zoom meeting is a digital meeting. It replaces a live meeting. So, you know, and this is, be sensible. Would you fill your diary with back-to-back meetings from 9 o'clock until 6 o'clock at night and hold that? You wouldn't. You wouldn't at all. You'd give yourself a break in between those meetings so you can prepare. And it's approaching digital meetings in exactly the same way. But it is like Alex says as well, it's very, very weird seeing your face on a screen all the time, because you don't happen in live, does it? Unless there's a mirror. No. I don't know. But it's all about being sensible and healthy boundaries instead of establishing those, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think as well,
the same way that you would plan your day normally.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's changed. Yeah, but I do think that's what's changed, because ultimately as well, for me, when I'm working normally, I will travel probably 2 hours there and 2 hours back, and I have that downtime to collect my thoughts, to work on what I need to not have to speak to anybody unless somebody interrupts me on the train, and I'll make it clear that I don't want to talk. And then I'll get to my day, do my day, get on the train, do 2 hours on the way back. But I'm giving myself 4 hours of my working day or outside my working day to prepare and get myself prepared for the next day, but also to give myself that kind of mental cleanse in my own time. Now you've got your full day end to end where you are working full capacity, as you say, on video as well, which is quite, you know, daunting. It can be. So we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to give ourselves downtime because of the sheer pressure. But then you've got on the other side people that are potentially not working or have been furloughed, that are then spending their time filling it with potentially, again, digital, and that's affecting well-being as well, because they're surfing, you know, looking at different work capacities, social media, news feeds that are coming in. So no matter which side, whether you've been furloughed or whether you're working, everyone's got the same pressures of the fact that digital is absolutely taking over right now, and it's affecting mental health.
Yeah. I suppose it's, you know, your downtime is really important. I think Alex has touched on that, Mark's touched on that, we've all touched on that, how important it is. Protect your downtime in the same way that you would have done anyway, because it's really important. So, you know, that time that you would have spent just preparing yourself mentally for the day, or at the end of the day in that commute, kind of processing everything that's happened, still reserve that downtime for you. You don't have to be talking to people, you can still reserve that for yourself, in terms of you're just using that space at home rather than in a commute. So I kind of wanted us to kind of touch on there, you know, preparing mentally for post COVID-19 kind of stuff. How can we address our mindset and mental health for the post COVID-19 world? So I suppose this is a lot of what we're just expanding from what we're talking about now. What can we be doing now to get ourselves ready mentally and emotionally and physically for when things go back to whatever the new normal may be?
Well, that's part of the problem. Whatever the new normal will be, we don't know. It's the uncertainty that's the biggest problem for everybody, because uncertainty causes anxiousness anyway. And there's nothing more uncertain than the current situation. So it's very difficult for people to see their way through because of that uncertainty. But I guess it's about sort of having a positive mental attitude about the change, and making sure that you make use of this time to develop skills, or to learn new things, or just get fitter, or whatever it is that you particularly want to do, and use this time to have a more positive attitude, and changing the direction of your sales. Where the wind direction's changed, now we need to change the direction of our sales to make use of that wind. And I guess that's my message, would be to try and look at the positive sides, and look at what you're going to do in the future, but have alternative plans available, because we don't know what's going to happen. You need to have what if scenarios. So that's where I want to get to. That's what I want to do. But what if that happens? What if this thing happens? And have alternative ways through that pathway, so that you don't get disappointed. Because if you only have one plan and something blocks that plan, then it's a very negative thing in the brain. So you need to have those alternatives to go back to. Okay, that didn't work, but I can do this instead.
Okay. Alex, anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess also just allowing ourselves not to be perfect as well, and knowing that there are going to be good and bad days. That this is a really, really hard time, for everyone. And so just noticing when the days are that you have that bit more energy, and maybe what it is that contributed to you feeling better or having that bit more energy, and then trying to schedule in more of the things that are helpful and that are positive. So it can be really useful to just sit down and just quickly jot down as many little things that actually make you smile and that you really enjoy during the day, and then try to kind of schedule those in as a bit of an antidote to the kind of difficult time. And naturally I would suggest a number of offline ones, but they can be online too. Anything that's intentional is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I think it's more about changing your habits as well to adapt to the situation. I've every morning now set my alarm to walk the dog for an hour before my day starts. And okay, I'm setting my alarm earlier and earlier because I've got more and more things to focus on, but I really need that time in the morning to start my day with a potentially clear head. And then again in the evening, we will go out and walk the dog. And personally, I've now, this many weeks in, I've decided to change some habits. I've made a conscious decision to stop drinking. So as of Monday, which I know it's only 4 days, I haven't dropped a touch of alcohol. And I just felt I was getting to the point that I was finishing after a complete day of Zoom and then hitting the beers. And it was like a vicious circle. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to stop this, because at the end of this, I want to come out in the best condition that I can be.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm going to come out of this 3 stone lighter, or I'm going to come out of this looking or feeling like this, but I want to be in the best condition that I can be. Because as Gavin said, we don't know what's going to happen, and I need to be in the best sort of mindset to be able to manage that, handle it, and to be able to navigate my way around it.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? Well-being's not, mental health and well-being isn't just for COVID-19. Mental health and well-being isn't something you do in January as a New Year's resolution. It's not something you do in October to raise money for men's mental health charities or anything like that. No, it's mental health and well-being is a choice that you make for life, but it's a lifestyle kind of thing, isn't it, Mark? You're good on habits and stuff. Go on.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if you could still hear me, because I can't see myself on the screen anymore, but hopefully I'm still. It's a better photo anyway. There's a couple of things I'd add to that, actually. Going back to sort of people craving normality, whatever that might be, I think it's important to remember, for a lot of people, life before COVID-19 is a very happy place to be, and people loved the lives that they were leading, and this is, a bit of an interruption to that, and it's a challenge. And I think all the advice the guys have given about positive mental attitude, trying to look after what's important for the time being, so that you can go back ready to go when all this is over, is great advice. It's important to remember, though, that, look, over the last 2, 3, 4 years, certainly since EventWell started, the spotlight on mental health has only got brighter. And the reason for that is because lots of people are experiencing serious levels of stress. The events industry in particular has been voted the fifth most stressful industry pretty consistently over the last few years. Lots of people going through burnout. So a big question I would ask ourselves is, look, how happy were we before all this started? Because craving going back to the life we had might not even be the best solution. And we've got a real opportunity. But if you were someone that might have been experiencing high levels of stress, and you might have been on the verge of burnout, and you might have been battling with all these sort of modern day stresses that we all go through because of this mad construct of capitalism that we live in, maybe this is the time to take a deep breath and go, right, what can I do in the meantime for the next 6 to 8 weeks, or however long it's going to be, to build some really good, healthy habits? Because habits take a long time to build. And the reason a lot of us struggle to do it is because we're distracted all the time and we've got no time. A lot of us say, oh, I don't have time to go to the gym because I've got 30 emails on my plate every time I wake up in the morning. Well, a lot of that's subsided a little bit now. So we do have some time, a lot of us, and we do have an opportunity to go, right, here's 10 health behaviours that I've actively said to my peers that I would like to implement into my life. I've got the time and energy to do it now. And I can actually put some effort into building those habits, because there is a process that you need to go through to building habits. It's not just overnight. We can talk about the stages of habit building if you want, but it might be a 30-minute TED talk as opposed to a panel discussion. So, but the important thing to remember is there are stages, and it requires discipline and it requires effort before it becomes easy. So maybe write a list of 3 or 4 habits that you want to start implementing, and behaviours that you want to develop, those new health behaviours that you want to take into life post COVID-19, and really put some effort in while you've got the time and energy to do it.
Yeah,
I'd like to support that, and I use the analogy of personal best. Do a personal best every day. So there's no magic bullet. You can't suddenly be a world champion in a day. So just doing everything better each day. So doing a personal best every day, just as elite sportsmen that aim to do a personal best every day. And those habits that you're talking about, Mark, it's just making sure that every day you do it slightly better than you did the day before. And before you know it, you'll be doing it as best you can.
That brings it back to there's no quick wins, is there? This is you're talking lifestyle changes when it comes to mental health and wellbeing. There's no quick fixes, there's no quick wins. It takes time, dedication.
Sorry, one final thing on habits, guys. I think this could be quite valuable for people. A big mistake that we make when it comes to habit forming is we try and bite off more than we can chew. And we might say, look, I'm going to eat healthier, and that's the habit that we want to introduce. And we fail to realise that actually eating healthier involves probably 10 things that you need to change. It involves changing your weekly shop. It involves changing the way you cook. It involves new recipes, more cooking from yourself. So there's lots of different things involved in that one habit. So it might be that you need to break it down and go, okay, this week I'm just going to eat less meat, or this week I'm just going to eat more vegetables, and make it a smaller, more manageable thing that you can implement a lot quicker and a lot more effectively. And you only got that one thing to focus on for a week or 2 weeks, or however long it takes to become easy and comfortable. And then you build it, and then you move on to the next thing.
One thing I would say though, Mark, on the point that you made, and I do agree with you, but you were saying there about kind of craving your old life. Which, I've been through that process myself, where I've just said, oh God, I just want to get back to my old life. However, I do also remember the time that I was saying when I was in my old life, was when people would say to you, how's things, and you'd be like, oh my God, it's just so busy. I'm doing this, and this. I'm up at this time in the morning. I'm away 3 nights a week. And subconsciously you are complaining about them, but actually now you're craving those ways. But at the time you were actually protesting against them. So it's a really weird thing, isn't it? That even though you're saying it's because you're comfortable with it, but you weren't comfortable about it.
I completely agree. Maybe I didn't communicate that effectively. That point you've just made is actually the one I was trying to make, and I think that we do have this concept that the grass is always greener. It's part of life. We always think that things are better over there, and we want what we don't have, and all of that stuff. And it's just part of being human. But I think it's an important question to answer is, which parts of the life that we used to have did we really enjoy, and did we really love, and did make us happy, and which parts could we do without, and like take this time of sort of downtime to work that out, and then build on the bits that we do want to go back to.
Yeah, I think that's the most important time in this period, that it's kind of teaching a lot of people about what's really important. I was talking about it this morning, and I was saying, my car, my nice brand new car that's been parked out there for 5 weeks that I can't drive around in, and expensive handbags and shoes and all of this kind of stuff, when it actually centers you a little bit and grounds you a little bit to kind of think, what, actually it's your health and well-being, it's the relationships you have with people you love and care about. And work is important, but should it really be taking up so much of your space?
Yeah.
It's stuff like that. It'd be quite nice to kind of take it onto a business angle now, because obviously we're the whole industry is experiencing a kind of downturn at the moment. We can't have our live events, so a lot of people are moving to digital. But when we do come back at some point this year, we're all assuming that it's going to kick off again in September, so we're looking at like Q3. Is there going to be pressure from companies to make up for that lost revenue from quarter one, Q2? For some people whose financial year starts in April, quarter one, Q2. What kind of pressures do you think businesses will be placing on managers and employees? What kind of thing?
I think people will be encouraged to work smarter and more creatively. I'm not sure how you can make up lost revenue from this when the industry is on its knees. As we said, we don't know what the new norm is going to look like, and it will be different. Gavin was saying to me yesterday, which is a really good point, is that, at 9/11, what came out of that is that you can't take any more than 100 mils on planes. That was an immediate, that's it. That hasn't changed since that, all those years ago. And there will be fundamental changes in our industry in terms of the way that, especially if social distancing is exercised till the end of this year. Walking into a hotel, the flow of guests, the space for restaurants, the way in which you check in, the way in which you check out, people not wanting to mix with people in conferences, the reconfiguration of conference rooms, buffets. All of these, buffets, all of these things are absolutely fundamental. And therefore, all of that will have a further knock-on effect. So not only are businesses shutting down right now and actually not going ahead for meetings, but in terms of actually cash flow, that's a massive concern for every single business, unless you are, Netflix, or unless you are a supermarket chain, or unless you are, unfortunately, coffin builders. There is, all of us have been absolutely affected, and therefore we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what the next 3 to 6 months or 9 months holds. But what we need to do is to be creative, and that's why we need to give our people the best chance to survive in terms of their own mental health and well-being, because this is a marathon and it's not a sprint.
Yeah, Gavin,
I think companies need to be realistic about the expectations and reset targets and budgets according to the reality rather than the fiction of the current budget. So that there's realistic, achievable targets there for people to hit, because it's not going to be what it was going to be. So you've got to redraw the whole thing. And I think the companies that are going to be successful are those who motivate their teams accordingly, rather than trying to flog a dead horse, because there isn't that money isn't there. So those that are successful are those that manage to get happy staff that are doing as well as they can be. But also the companies that are going to do well are those that are going to keep customer satisfaction and customer confidence. So there's companies like Accor going out there with a cleanliness accreditation, if you like, about how they're going to clean their hotels better. And if the small independent hotels and other chains and also event venues don't follow that and meet that, they're going to fall behind the competition. Marriott have also announced something as well. So it's about being on the front foot and using this downtime to make sure that you come out with a plan that's going to be right for the new normal. And the new normal is going to be different. Like Leigh was just saying about 9/11 changed the normal about how we check onto planes. This is going to change the new normal about events and accommodation and how we deal with that. We can't have breakfast buffets anymore. So how is a 500-bedroom hotel going to do breakfast? They're going to have to look at how they do that.
Yeah.
And they're looking at that now, not in 3 months' time when we when lockdown stops. It needs to be looked at now and go out and give confidence to the customer that we've thought about it and dealt with it and come up with something. You can't have a buffet anymore, so you're going to have a grab-and-go bag, individual to each individual person, perhaps. I don't know if that's how it's going to end up or not, but hotels and venues need to come up with the solutions that are going to match so that they go forward. So all of us have got a part to play in that, whether you're an employee, a manager, or an owner of a business, or a senior director of a business. You've all got a part to play in making sure that your company is future fit using the HBAA logo.
The report that's come out from the Business of Events and the BVP is actually going to said that they don't anticipate customer confidence to have returned to anywhere near normal levels until later in 2021. So I suppose the big question now is, how can the industry deal with creating viable events in this short term, bearing in mind, you know, that everything that you guys have just talked about, so the social distancing, the concern over food safety, cleanliness, all of that. So how as an industry can we start creating viable events? Is it hybrid solutions? Is it what can we be doing, do you think? And I'm going to Mark, I'm going to ask you that question.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on food safety actually, because I think it's an important point to make. I mean, as a caterer, this is something I've been quite focused on. Is the world, none of the governing health bodies, World Health Organization, Public Health England, CDC, all of them are pretty consistent in the message that this doesn't spread through food. So in terms of food safety itself, providing companies are following the hygiene practices that they should, and the HACCP procedures that they should be following already, not much should change, because, you know, we can't catch the virus through food as far as we know. So there's that. In terms of how we're going to adapt to this sort of thing, I think Gavin touched on a lot of it just now. You know, we need to start being creative with how we're serving our food, and you know, a lot of the traditional practices of buffets, of, you know, even canapé and bowl food receptions where people are in enclosed spaces are going to be affected, and we need to think quite creatively about how we serve hot food at events that are going to go through sort of social distancing measures. I've got to be honest, I don't have any answers right now, because it happened yesterday, and we're getting on Zoom calls and we're having meetings wherever possible to sort of address these solutions. But it's certainly going to be a big factor over the next sort of 3 to 6 months of how we tackle this as a catering and as a supplier to the industry. So yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, it's one of those that, you know, we can speculate, but no one's got all the answers right now.
That's really coming together as an industry, really, isn't it? So it's having more of these open conversations, forums, business analysis, having meetings together to come up with solutions.
Yeah.
Hazel's actually asked a good question, and it is one that I've actually got on my list here as well. So HBAA, they champion mental health first aid at work. EventWell, Balancing Edges, you guys are trainers for mental health first aid, so it's something that we absolutely 100% endorse as well. But what else, and it's speaking to Hazel's question, what else do businesses need to be doing to support the recovery of their people, their teams, and their businesses, the sustainability of their people when we get back to the new norm? So Leigh and Gavin first, and it'd be quite interesting to hear Alex's thoughts as well. Alex, you go first.
Well, yeah, so certainly the digital wellbeing is actually a real opportunity area here to be able to help your employees and help your team. And that's because even before COVID-19, there were the impacts being felt of this always-on culture of the emails after hours. You know, there's a survey done that said that 61% of managers feel that they can't switch off as a result of technology, and technology can impact sleep, productivity, anxiety, and well-being, the ways in which we use it. But the good news is that it isn't whether we use it, but it's how we use it. So there is the possibility there to be able to educate and to be able to embed a culture that's more supportive for well-being. And I think they're the two strands, that it's empowering employees with the knowledge and the tools through training, but also looking at and addressing the organisational culture. And within the culture piece, you can challenge things like late night emails, for instance, which are a real contributing factor to well-being and mental health. So small things you can do, like delaying delivery. So if you send an email late at night, but you don't need the person to actually read it or respond, then why does it need to hit their inbox? You can just delay delivery. As a company, you can talk about your policy, about to what extent you are happy for those late night emails to be being sent in the first place, to have those open conversations. And I guess also challenging that immediate response culture too. So can we train ourselves out of sending requests and requiring that immediate response that just kind of keeps those stress levels high? So there's a lot that can be done in that space that can contribute.
Yeah, definitely. Gavin, Leigh, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I agree, Alex, what you're saying. Continuous culture, so setting those habits now and setting them long term, but also looking at being able to provide team members with the toolkits that they need to sustain this pace, because none of us know what it's going to like. As we've talked about, the next 3 months is going to be really, really tough for us all. The government, as we know, we're waiting to find out next week in terms of what their next changes are. The furloughing of staff, we're seeing that on an ongoing basis, but what happens to our industry? And one thing that the HBAA are lobbying at the moment is that we are requesting that furloughing for the events and hospitality industry is actually ongoing beyond any other industry. Because when you think about it, the shops will come back. Mm-hmm. The pubs and restaurants eventually will come back. People will start buying clothes online. Football will be delivered behind the scenes. What about our industry? And therefore, what we're championing is the fact that we need support longer term than what we've currently got. Because ultimately, yes, we're worrying about it here and now, but what about longer term? What about, the holidays that stop for mortgages? What about the fact that, credit cards we don't have to pay? When that dries up, that's when it's going to hit us. And our businesses need to be able to support us on that, and not just right now. And I don't mean necessarily financially, which would be great, but more about how can they help us to help ourselves through that time, through guidance, knowing that we've got places to go to, knowing that we've got knowledge to help us to be able to cope, and coping strategies as well.
Yeah.
I would just say that 37% of organisations have reported that there's an increased stress-related absence from work. So managing that better to have people happier at work will have a better effect on their performance, as well as their mental health and physical health. 55% that said that common mental health conditions have increased, and that's against 41% in 2016. So all these curve balls that are going up the way, we need to try and get them coming down the way. Now, obviously, some of that could be because reporting is more honest than it was before. But I do think there's an upward trend in those figures that needs to be addressed, and how you address that is by one of the ways I've been reading recently, actually in this downtime, I've been reading about psychological capital and how companies can make their staff feel positive about work and about how they deal with work, and doing the right thing by their employees as a cultural thing. And I think that's, for me, what it's all about, is making mental health and well-being, but also psychological capital, make them all cultural within the businesses, rather than just a tick box exercise done by HR or by health and safety or whoever's looking after mental health and well-being in the organisation, and making it really mean something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, culture is really important, isn't it? It's certainly one of it. It's actually one of the values of EventWell. It's one of our 3 values for businesses to look at the culture that exists within their organisations. That is the most damaging thing for teams and people in work. Yeah. Really, is that.
And I think that this is potentially a good thing that's going to come out of this, because I think what has been recognised during this crisis is the mental health situation and the well-being situation for people. And I think it's much higher up the agenda as a result of what's been going on here, and it's been thought about by a lot of people, which perhaps 2 or 3 years ago it wouldn't have been. So I think it's a great thing, and it's pushing it up the agenda. What we've got to do as in sort of our part of the industry, if you like, is make sure that momentum is maintained after the crisis is over, that it's not just dropped like a stone when the good times are rosy again.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. Ruby Wax was on Question Time last week. Love Ruby Wax. And she's a trained psychiatrist now, rather than comedian, still comedian as well. And she was talking about the fact that vulnerable people in society, and she brought up the question of how actually you would think that people with mental health conditions, I have bipolar, we think that people with mental health conditions at this moment in time would be the most vulnerable with everything that we're going through, but actually they're not. A lot of people with mental health conditions and have suffered from depression and stuff in the past, they actually know what to do when they're in this, when we're in this
coping strategies.
Yeah. So we have those coping mechanisms and those tools that we've already established. It's the people who don't necessarily actually find themselves in a very troubling, difficult time. So I suppose it's for businesses and employees, what can they be doing to ensure that those people, that everybody within their team, not just the guys that they know have got a history of mental health conditions or illness, what can they be doing to better support? Because I see there being a mental health shock, and a lot of people are talking about mental health shock, because effectively what a lot of people are going through right now is trauma. So how can our employers and businesses in the industry be preparing for the potential that they've got a lot of people going back to offices, going back into work that are probably suffering, some of them from PTSD, some areas of that. What can they be putting in place? Is it just the mental health first aid training, or the culture? What kind of?
Well, it's culture. It's got to be the culture. I mean, the first aid training is great, and obviously I would say that, wouldn't I? Because I do it, but that's not. It shouldn't stop there, because what I've experienced from some of my delegates is they go on the course, they come out really motivated, they're all up for it, and then they hit a cliff because their organisation doesn't take that on and support it. Even though they paid for the course, they don't take it on and support it and make it something that's cultural. It doesn't get communicated within the business. So it's much more than just first aid training. It has to be this cultural piece that we've got to all work on to make sure that companies are considering mental health serious and well-being seriously when they're doing the company or creating the company culture. And some are good at it, some are dreadful at it, and we probably all know who they are. But that's what we've got to try and do.
Yeah. Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
And I think also making sure that there's safe spaces and forums to be able to have those conversations about what it is that everybody is going through, and to be able to, take essentially prevention is better than cure as well. So really investing in that mental health program and delivering things that can actually help us to sustain a healthy life in the first place, rather than reacting afterwards. So I think really being proactive with the mental health work and enabling those conversations. And I mean, I guess I would say certainly the digital wellbeing, is up there in those areas that's really beneficial to discuss in terms of creating healthy habits that can sustain that actually, because I guess when you mention coping mechanisms as well, sometimes our digital behaviours can be negative coping mechanisms, and so having those conversations too about what does healthy digital use look like, and what does automatic but unhelpful digital use look like. And it's actually sometimes we do so much of this automatically that it's only when we start to have these conversations and having them as a group is so beneficial, because we all learn from each other. So that I find that in my workshops, that somebody will suggest that they do I don't know, so maybe turning off their phone at 9 o'clock so that they can sleep better, and then somebody else will say, oh gosh, that's that's brilliant, and so everyone's kind of learning from each other's best practice. So I guess creating those forums where you can talk about the issues, your coping strategies and best practice, because we're all experts in our own experience as well, so we can all learn from each other and help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's part of the concept, isn't it? To have those forums created to allow that discussion to take place.
I think that's really important, isn't it? It's one of the things that I think all of us endorse is more open forums, more conversations about mental health in the workplace. And that all fits into the government's 6 core standards from the Thriving at Work review that was written in 2017 as well, that in terms of supporting employee mental health and wellbeing, they're the things that need to be happening. Because you're creating those safe environments for people at work where they can talk openly about their mental health and if they're struggling. And that's all part of your culture. I think Rachel's made a good comment here. She kind of put, she feels that in 3 to 6 months' time, the pressure will be on far more than it is now. And she feels that this will be a time to worry if your business gets through this time, if you have a job, money concerns. As currently we're not paying mortgages, council tax and not spending. So the government will not be there in 3 months' time to pay wages, help businesses. In terms of financial support for the industry, what is it? Do we need to be lobbying the government that they need to be extending that support to event industry?
So the HBAA are actually doing that as an open letter at the moment. So we are looking at requesting to extend the furloughing, also the mental health first aid, having a united voice as well. At the moment, our industry actually doesn't have an identity, so it's called an SID code. So different companies and different businesses will sit, but collaboratively and collectively, we are a lot stronger. We are one industry, because venue finding agencies actually don't come under anywhere right now. They're not under hospitality. They're not an events agency. They're not event management. So we are lobbying different things from that. But that obviously is a wider issue. It's how we support ourselves, and that worry longer term, and that anxiety of the fact of, as Rachel quite rightly says, the money issues. I actually didn't realise until I just read Rachel's note about council tax relief. We haven't actually applied for that, so I'm doing that tonight. But it is a worry. It's a worry for every single one of us in terms of financial and what that looks like. So not only are you worrying about, will the business survive, you're worrying about, can I pay my bills? You're worrying about everything to do with your own personal health. All of this has a massive impact on your stress levels, your anxiety, your mental health, and you can't control what you can't control in terms of how the industry or how the government are going to support us. We're going to obviously look at ways to lobby our voice, but at the moment we've got to just look after ourselves and plan longer term as much as we can. And unfortunately, none of us have that crystal ball to understand what it looks like, but we've just got to be in the best condition to be able to tackle it.
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel's just put there, is it happening automatically with council tax?
Is it? Are you? Oh, is it? Oh, brilliant. Okay, so can I respond? Do I need to cancel my direct debit?
Oh, really?
No, I'm just asking Rachel if she knows whether I need to cancel my direct debit or not.
This is great news. I didn't know this either.
I know, I've come off this call learning something, so that's amazing, because that's quite a couple of £100 a month that we'll get back. So I don't think there's any kind of real, as I say, we don't have a crystal ball, and it's just about making sure that you look after yourselves right now. And, anything that you see coming up in terms of support, like I know both Helen, Gavin and Alex have done great and continue to do great things in the industry, and just making sure that we look after ourselves and gives ourselves the best chance of survival for ourselves personally, not obviously businesses, because that will be what it will be.
Which brings us, I think, nicely to a close on that. We're at 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock. So if anybody has any other questions, let me know. Any closing remarks from our esteemed panel? Alex, any top tip you give to anyone right now? If there's one thing we should be doing right now.
There's been so much wonderful information shared by everybody today, and I guess I quite liked what Leigh said about the fact that our lives before might not have been as good as we're now thinking that they might be. And equally, I think it's really positive to think that actually when we look back, there probably will be some aspects of our current experience which are positive. There are, some of us are getting more time with our family, there's more downtime, perhaps to be able to take up new skills. And then also we've talked a lot about habits, and this is a great opportunity to create those positive habits that will then be a real asset for us for the rest of our lives. So taking that time to create the positive habits that are going to sustain you, whether they're digital habits or not digital habits.
Yeah.
Nice habits. Yeah. Any closing thoughts?
I think I've made about the cultural thing. It's a bit of my hobby horse of mine, but making companies think culturally about mental health and well-being. And I agree with the positive, looking positively at things, and you can actually train your brain to be positive as well if you do things in a positive manner. And the way of doing that is this personal best every day. In my view, just every day you get out of bed, try and do better today than you did yesterday, and not try and reinvent the wheel in one day. It's not going to happen.
And for me, I think it's just be true to yourself, recognise the signs in yourself, recognise the triggers, and be able to exercise positive aspects that you're in control of. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you, guys. I suppose a closing note for me is anyone struggling as well at the moment, because there's a lot of people out there that are. Remember, it's okay to not be okay. You don't have to be happy every day at the moment, because that's not necessarily normal. Remember to reach out. There are support lines available. EventWell has a support line as well, so you can reach out to that. We have people trained in mental health first aid who are ready to give advice and support. Yeah. So remember, it's okay to have a down day and not feel great and be angry and worried and stuff. But they're all normal human emotions. But try and maintain a level of positivity as much as you can.
Right.
Catherine just asked if it will be available as a recording.
And it will. We have recorded this, so I shall be polishing it up and branding it up and making that available. So we'll share that, and the HBAA will share that.
Yeah, we will. Thanks a lot, Helen, for moderating. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Gavin. Thanks, Leigh. Stay well, everybody. Stay safe, and thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Bye.